What if someone erased a debt you could never repay? How would you respond to those who owe you? Today we journey through the pages of the Christian Bible in the book of Matthew chapter 18, verses 21 through 35, to a tale known as the parable of the unforgiving servant. In this parable, we find a king who decides to settle accounts with his servants. One man brought before him owes an astronomical sum, 10,000 talents. To put this in perspective, a single talent was worth more than 20 years of a day laborer's wages. This servant's debt was so vast that it was humanly impossible to repay. The king, in his rightful authority, orders the man, along with his family and all he owns, to be sold to repay the debt. The servant, in his desperation, falls on his knees and pleads for mercy, promising to repay everything. Touched by his plea, the king shows great mercy and forgives the servant's entire debt. Now, you might expect the servant to be overjoyed, grateful, and transformed by this experience. However, upon leaving the king, he encounters a fellow servant who owes him a mere 100 denarii, a modest sum equivalent to 100 days' wages. Instead of extending the same mercy he received, the forgiven servant seizes his fellow servant, demands immediate payment, and when unable to pay, has him thrown into prison. News of this reaches the king, who calls back the forgiven servant. Angered by his lack of mercy, the king reinstates his original debt and hands him over to be tortured until he can repay the entire debt. So, what does this parable mean? At its core, it's a lesson in forgiveness and mercy. The king represents God, who forgives our vast, unpayable debt of sin. The forgiven servant is like us, recipients of God's immense mercy. Yet, when we withhold forgiveness from others, we are like the servant who refused to forgive the small debt of his fellow servant. This parable challenges us to reflect on the forgiveness we have received and to extend that same forgiveness to others. If God has forgiven us a debt we could never repay, should we not also forgive those who have wronged us? It's a stark reminder that forgiveness isn't optional. It's a mandate for those who have experienced God's mercy. It's a call to let go of bitterness and resentment, to release the debts we feel are owed to us, just as our larger debt has been released by God. In conclusion, the parable of the unforgiving servant is a powerful narrative that underscores the importance of mercy and forgiveness. It's a story that invites us to look inward, to evaluate our hearts, and to extend to others the same grace and forgiveness that we have freely received. After all, in the grand scheme of things, the debts we hold against each other pale in comparison to the debt of sin that has been erased for us. So, let's remember to forgive as we have been forgiven.